Hello, my name is Teri Takai, and I'm a Vice President for the Center for Digital Government. And I'm here today with Ann Dunkin, the Chief Information Officer for the U.S. Department of Energy. Ann has been a tech leader in both public and private sector, including her previous titles as the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer focused on state and local government at Dell Technologies, and the Chief Information Officer for the County of Santa Clara, California. So, Ann, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here, Teri. Thanks for having me.
And Ann, you and I have been connected for such a long time. And it's so much fun, though, for me to hear about your career and kind of how it got started and how you ended up in the position that you're in today. So, tell us a little bit about that. You've been in government agencies. I know you've been in education, and it's been both state and local government and some time in industry. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about your career and, how have you kind of navigated through all of these different types of roles?
Yeah, well, that's great. Maybe someone could tell me the answer to that question. So, Teri, I spent a long time at Hewlett-Packard. I'm not sure I want to tell people how long anymore. It just says how old I am. But at some point, I decided that maybe it was time to do something other than try and get people to buy printers and ink and paper. And I had the opportunity to go work for Palo Alto School District. And, I really found, as I know you did, Teri, in your career, that public service bug just bites you, right? And so that job, I was there for 5 years. During the time I was there, there was sort of a long story, which I won't get into, which led me to have the opportunity to be nominated for a position in the Obama administration. And so that was how I wound up at the EPA. From there, obviously left the EPA at the end of the administration, as we do. I wanted to take the opportunity to come back to California or go back to California and to have that experience at local government. So I was lucky enough to be able to find the job at the county. And then, I'm a firm believer that people should move between public and private sector. I think it's better for both. I think that we would have a much more informed public if more people worked in the public sector. But I think we've got a lot to learn from each other in both sides. So that was one of the reasons why I went back and went to Dell. But then, after, certainly before the president won the election, I got a call from the transition team. And, it's hard to say no, right? When they say, we want you to serve, if you're so inclined, you tend to do that. So, I think the part of the big answer to that question is being open to the opportunities that show up. Right? I spent a lot of time at HP thinking I was going to be at HP for my career. I was going to retire from HP. It was great. HP was a great company, and I did some great things there. But I've had a much more interesting career by being open to changing and doing things and taking those chances, right? When you go in the second term to an administration, you've got a limited time. I mean, and I came halfway through the second term. So you have a very short period of time to get things done. And you don't know what's going to happen afterwards. And so you have to take that leap of faith that says, I'll have another job. Something will happen that'll be good. I'm not going to end up on the street when this is all over. So I think being willing to take those risks and try new things is part of what's made me be able to make all those moves.
And that's amazing. But maybe you could share, when you go into a new role like that, how do you think about that? I mean, clearly it's a little daunting going in, but how do you get into it and how do you get started and how do you get comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little daunting. DOE has a $42 billion budget, got $62 billion more coming in from the IIJA. They need to find a better acronym for that. $4 billion on IT spend when you add in supercomputing to that. That's a lot, right, as a CIO. Not as big as DOD, but it's a lot. So, I think you just have to I do the same thing pretty much everywhere. It's like you go talk to lots of people and figure out what's going on. Certainly the second time around in the federal government has been easier than the first because I know a lot of people. I know how the government works. but I didn't know DOE at all. I was at EPA before. So it's, talk to a lot of people, listen to them, make sure that employees understand that you care about what they think, that you want their input. And one of the things I think is particularly important in the federal government, but I think anywhere, is as a leader, not showing up with your agenda of what you think needs to get done, but finding out what the organization needs. And I think often leaders come in thinking, I know what needs to happen for this organization, or I know what I want to do because that's the thing I want to do next in my career. And you actually have to make sure that what you want to do is what the organization needs. And, our goal with the administration as a whole, but certainly my goal at DOE, is to leave in a better place than I found it.
I love that. And because I think we all know in government, sometimes it's hard to know what's going to happen. And clearly having that goal of leaving it better than when you came in is just really so important. Well, I want to shift a little bit to you personally. You're a licensed professional engineer. And so as you see kind of the landscape today, what are some of the key barriers, do you think, that are keeping women out of the STEM workforce? And what are some things from your experience that we should be doing to attract more young women, into technical fields?
Teri, that's a place where my experience in K-12 education sort of really enlightens my thoughts on this process. We see girls drop out of math and science as early as the 5th grade. So they're already being socialized out of math and science at very young ages. And if they don't study math and science, it's very hard for them to end up in STEM fields. And what's interesting is if you go back to the history of computer science, computers, first of all, computers, and in the term of an individual being a computer, those were women who were doing all of the calculations. Early computer scientists, there were a lot of women, and that changed when gaming came along. When gaming came along, computer science switched to be very male dominated. We've never gotten back. Engineering has always been very male dominated, but getting girls to stay interested in math and science through grade school, through middle school, through high school is hugely important. So, what educators do now is build maker spaces and labs and places where kids can go and play with technology and learn things, and really make a concerted effort to make sure the girls are participating just like the boys are participating in those, and to make sure there are good mentors and good leaders and teachers who help those students to stay engaged. And that is the thing, that the girls need teachers and other adults who will keep them engaged all the way through. Then, right, once they get to be adults, you have another problem, right, is that it's really hard for women to stay in the workforce through their entire career without taking a break. And they often get derailed. So even if they're in a STEM field, they may get derailed either in college for some reason or after they graduate, and find themselves unable to get back in because they simply, their skills get rusty, or people look at them as someone who's had a break. So we need to be more supportive of women in the workforce as well to keep those women in STEM careers. But first, we've got to get them there. We don't get them there if we don't keep them interested in math and science. So to me, it's really about what happens in elementary, middle school, and high school.
And I love that. I had heard statistics that young people, and this is, girls and boys, very often form their idea of what they want to do around age 11. And so you're seeing that it's really important to be and have actual great, interesting information and opportunities at that age.
Yes.
Well, let's shift a little bit back and to you. People always talk about mentors, but let me ask you the question a little differently.
Okay.
Who are some individuals that have been influential in your career, whether they were a mentor, someone that you looked up to, someone that you perhaps emulated? Who are some of those individuals, and why were they important to you?
Well, so that's seriously a question. I'll give you a couple ends of the spectrum. I think, I have to start, and we all end up starting here. I think with my parents for two reasons. One is my mother. So my mother married while she was still in college. She got divorced when she was a single parent, and got her undergraduate and master's degrees at University of Pennsylvania. So she was one of 3 women in her graduating class at Wharton in 1960.
Wow.
So, that was a role model of someone who could do whatever she felt like doing. And my father believed that, his kids, and there were 4 girls and 1 boy, and he was like, you can do whatever you want to do, and you will be successful at whatever you want to do. So I had good role models who told me I could go do what I wanted to do, or who showed me that I could go do what I wanted to do. So, that's part of it. But I think, throughout my career, there have been people who, it may have simply been one little piece of advice, or, one bit of friendship. I mean, fairly recently, Stan Myberg, who was the deputy DPA when I was there, is one of the best leaders I think I've ever worked for. And I think by the time I got to DPA, I think I was a pretty good leader. But I learned a lot from Stan, a lot of really pragmatic things about how to lead in government, because he had spent his entire career in government. So that was, amazing. And just watching some of the, having the opportunity to work for, and of course you have worked for Secretary Granholm, as I do now, and working for people like Secretary Granholm, and working for Gina McCarthy and people like that. They're not mentoring you, but that experience of seeing up close how those people work is incredibly enlightening, to learn how to grow to that, next level of political savvy and understanding of the world and of how we get things done. So it has been, it was a tremendous opportunity to be a smaller agency, because as CIO at a smaller agency, I really got up close and personal to how the agency worked and how Gina and others worked. And, it's just been great carrying on at DOE to learn about that leadership team. So lots of great people, where sometimes they give you a bit of advice, or you just simply get the opportunity to watch them work and realize just how amazing they are.
I love that, Ann. I really love that. Well, let's go to some advice for those that are really listening. So, what piece of advice would you give yourself in the first few years of your career?
Yeah, that's actually really easy, Teri, because I give this advice to a lot of people, and I mentioned it, I sort of obliquely mentioned it, is don't get too comfortable. I think I got way too comfortable at HP, and I stayed there too long. Towards the end of my career, there were some family things that caused me to stay. It was when my parents were ill and things like that. But still, I probably should have been gone already. Not that it wasn't a great company, but it was a little too easy to be there and to be comfortable. I knew how it all worked. I was making my money. The money I was making was fine. I liked the people I worked with. They gave me things to do, but it wasn't really that. It had stopped being as challenging as it could be in terms of my growth as a manager and a leader. And so, that's the same reason why, I was able to then turn around and take the risk of working for the administration late in the administration. It's if you don't get too comfortable with things, that can translate to, let's take some risks and go try something else. So I would have told myself that 10 years before I should have left HP, but who knows what would have happened. I'm very happy where I landed now, so maybe it all worked out for the best that I stayed that long. But yeah, I think people need to get out and take a risk. I've been harassing one of my kids. He's been the same place since he graduated from college, and he's very, very comfortable there. And I keep telling him he needs to get out and go try something new. But being of course a good young adult, he doesn't listen to the people who raised him. So he's still there.
And I love that piece of advice, because I think we all have to get brave and sometimes take things on that we might not have necessarily thought we could do. Well,
Right.
Ann, thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me, and for really sharing your thoughts and your story. And thank you to all of our listeners today. We're excited to say that Ann will also be participating in Government Technology's upcoming Women in Public Sector Summit, sponsored by Microsoft, on April 27th, 2022. If you're interested in attending, please email Brittany Roberts at broberts@erepublic.com. And thank you so much again. We're so excited to have you. And to everyone that's listening, we hope to see you at our summit on April 27th, 2022.